I bet you can't guess what this catfish, this northern pike, and this largemouth bass all have in common. Give up? They all fell for homemade lures.
What's the story behind this little creature here?
That is a lure that I put together when I was a little kid. Yeah, this little tiger tail fly probably started all this ridiculous tradition of making our own lures to catch fish. This is kind of a conglomeration of different materials that I probably found around the house when I was a little kid. I probably cut a little section off of a stuffed tiger or something to make the body. And then I run some 20-pound test Dacron fishing line through it. The feather on there I probably took off of a chicken and dyed it yellow. Here's a lure that Dusty made here a while back. What do you call this thing?
Well, this here is a short arm spinnerbait. This spinnerbait's a little different than a normal spinnerbait because it has a shorter arm, and I put a bigger blade on it, a black nickel blade that gives it a lot more vibration. I use this lure here when I think the fish aren't going to be quite as active. It sends out that vibration. It kind of wakes those fish up if they're kind of in an inactive stage, and you might get that fish to bite that otherwise wouldn't. Now that's the short arm spinnerbait, but John, I see you've got a little different kind of spinnerbait yourself, a long arm spinnerbait. What's up with that?
Yeah, this is kind of on the other end of the spectrum. This is what I call a magnum spinnerbait. I put an extra long arm in this one. Probably the main reason I built this long arm spinnerbait was to try to get away from using a steel leader. But I found out real soon that I did have to use a steel leader because I've had a couple of pike actually chomp all the way through here and break it off. How about this one here? That's kind of an odd looking thing.
Well, this spinnerbait has a pretty good story behind it. Actually, this is a second model version of this lure. The first version of this lure I actually made out of sheer stupidity. I just put the strangest combinations together and made a bright colored lure, and one day I took her out of my tackle box and cast it just for the heck of it, and I just started waylaying the pike. I mean, every cast I was catching pike with it. John couldn't believe it, and it became one of my favorite pike fishing spinnerbaits after that. Until one day I had a pike bite all the way past the lure and the steel leader and bit her clean off. And I had to go and make a brand new one, and I made a few adjustments. The previous one didn't have this Doc Shelton blade on it, and I added a trailer hook with an extra trailer on it. Make her even more hideous looking, I guess, but the fish sure like it.
So what do you call that thing?
Well, as you can imagine why, I named this the clown lure. And if you think this lure is ridiculous, take a look at the one I just made. Well, as you can see, I'm anything but conventional. Now, I gave this lure a really ridiculous name. My grandmother took one look at this lure and she said the trailer on here looked like a lady's leg. And therefore, I gave this lure the name Tri-Bladed Lady's Leg Lure. Well, how about those lures over there? Those don't really look homemade at all. Those look like something I'd go pick up at a store.
Yeah, at first glance, these do look like the same spinnerbaits that you go down to Walmart to buy. But I've actually done a lot of little modifications to these lures to tweak them. The first thing I did on this spinnerbait was put a closed eye on it. The two types of spinnerbaits you can buy is a closed eye or an R-bend. Most of them that you buy at Walmart have an R-bend in it. This one has a closed eye so that you can hook a steel leader on there and it doesn't ride up this arm. Also, I've had a lot of R-bend spinnerbaits break off right here at this point. Also, I use a ball bearing swivel on the main blade, and put a closed loop on this end also so we don't lose that blade. These particular blades are called Doc Shelton blades, and if you get an odd and an even size, if you notice, they're shaped opposite of each other, so one will spin one way through the water and the other one will spin the other way, which gives it a lot of weird action. We'll talk you through the process we go through to build these lures. In Dusty's left hand is a 4/0 Gamakatsu spinnerbait hook. Over here in his right hand is called a wire form. On the end of the wire form is a little U-bend. Dusty will take the 4/0 hook and just hook it right on there. Next he places this into the lead mold. This is a spinnerbait lead mold, and then he'll shut the lid on it. Next he'll tilt that mold straight up, and then we'll pour lead from a lead pot right into this spout. And this is what it looks like coming out of the form. Next we just paint it the head, add the skirt and the blades, and we've got our finished product.
Enough with these spinnerbaits. Let's move on to some of these other lures. How about this one right here? That's kind of cool looking.
Yeah, that's actually a top water lure I made 15 or 20 years ago. The body of that's carved out of redwood, and then I put just a little bit of a lead weight in the back so it actually sits in the water and at an angle about like that. Real good lure for walking the dog.
Well, now I know this ain't a top water lure. What kind of fish in its right mind would bite this?
Well, this lure was actually built by my brother quite a few years ago. He calls it the Gill Deadly. It kind of lays on its side, and he's actually caught a lot of bass with this thing.
Okay, I can believe that, but you can't tell me you've actually caught a fish with this thing right here. That thing is hideous looking.
That's actually my Mississippi mud cat. I built that to try to mimic an actual bullhead. It's made out of a chunk of oak. I took a rubber band to make the whiskers. I put some little orange tips on it. And I've got a big long plastic trailer on there. Swims right through the water. And believe it or not, I actually have caught pike on this thing. What do you call that thing?
What, you don't like my balloon lure? This is called really boring days at college, and sit down in your dorm room real bored like, and you think of the craziest lures you can make possible and actually try to catch a fish with them. I have yet to catch a fish with it, but I haven't fished with it all that much, and I think I'm going to make this year the year to catch a big old pike on it. It's a topwater lure, but it does have a few problems. It will collect water after a while and has trouble staying afloat, but I do have some reserves on her, believe it or not. Built-in balloons to keep it afloat. Can't believe you're making fun of my balloon lure.
I tell you what, you catch a fish on that thing and I will give you the keys to the hunting rig.
Consider it done.